Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here on World Oceans Day. Firstly, let me extend my big thanks to Dr. Arnab for having invited me here. Thank you so much. I must tell you that this is one of the topics which is now, in fact, has been the flavor of the season for many seasons. And so I must compliment MRC for having organized this event, firstly, and the presentation that I went through, the first two, absolutely spot on when it comes to choosing the topics. And I'm sure I would have been happier to attend the next two as well. Especially the one on fisheries and aquaculture, which is the fourth one I noticed. But unfortunately, I'm rushing for another World Oceans Day seminar, which is by the GNLU. So that's again a webinar. So I just do it from here. But thank you very much for having invited me. There are different aspects of UDA. In fact, when you tell me, a naval officer who's been in the Navy for 40 years, about UDA, my mind straight away goes to a submarine, to an uncrewed underwater vehicle, and so on and so forth. The other obvious use for me is for blue economy. I mean, these two are so linked to underwater domain awareness. Now, when it comes to security, as I said, conventional threats, dime a dozen. I mean, earlier it was only a deployed submarine. And if you actually look at our region, starting from Iran to our west, to Pakistan, to India, we ourselves, to Bangladesh, to Myanmar, to Thailand, to Malaysia, to Indonesia, to Singapore, everybody in this region operates a submarine. So these waters are filled with submarines. So our ability to detect them, track them, and also our ability to deploy our own submarines without the adversary or a potential adversary being able to detect him can always be a challenge. And so much depends upon our ability for comprehensive and efficient UDA. That's something that we need to keep in mind. And all these kinds of projects which are being done, whether it is acoustic signature in the area, even without anybody operating, I mean, there is this inherent noise that the sea generates. So that is so much helpful when, say, designing sonars, for instance, which goes on board ships, which goes on board submarines, or which goes on board torpedoes. In fact, designing a torpedo is as much a challenge in these waters, where the acoustic signatures can be a bit of a challenge in tropical waters. And when it comes to seabed sensors, the world during Cold War had seabed sensors all over the place. And so there is a need for us to deploy seabed sensors effectively and efficiently, so that we are ready for any action that might take place against us. Underwater cables is something that I would like to mention about. As you all are aware, the the seabed cables are the ones which carry about 98% of global communications, including financial transactions and the like. You would have read in the news as to how there was a week in which four of the undersea cables that connect India to Europe through the Bab el Mandeb, which goes through the Gulf of Aden, through the Red Sea and out. In fact, every cable that connects India to Europe goes through the Gulf of Aden, and four of them were, cut because of the Houthi threat. Some ships are dropping anchor and the likes. So these kinds of threat can always pose a huge problem. So we need to be very, very clear on our UDA, who's operating where, and what impacts our ability to operate these cables unhindered. So for this, of course, you will also find that, as you know about the UNCLOS, 12 nautical miles is our own territorial waters. Beyond that, up to 200 is our EEZ. Whereas everything that happens, whether it is the undersea cables going about, or even the ISA allotted areas, or the likes, quiet often happens beyond the EEZ. So how do we handle this? This can only be handled through international collaboration. And this is a must. Alone, no country can achieve a comprehensive UDA, quite like the MDA challenge. In fact, when it comes to MDA, we have made giant strides. After our 2611 MDA, which was earlier merely a Navy specific activity has now become a regional activity. In fact, now a global activity. There are white shipping technical agreements signed with many countries, and they all contribute to the Information Fusion Center Indian Ocean region at Gurugram. So quite like that, there is a need for us. Of course, a lot of things are happening currently. There is a need for us to approach it very collaboratively with our partner nations. When it comes to blue economy, I mentioned about seabed minerals. This is something that when it is beyond our exclusive economic zone, the authority to allocate such areas for seabed minerals is the International Seabed Authority, the ISA. And India, as probably you're already aware, has already 3 areas allotted to it. One is a 75,000 square kilometers area, which is 2,000 kilometers south of Cape Comorin, Kanyakumari, and there is a 10,000 square kilometers area, which is about 4,000 kilometers south of Kanyakumari. One for polymetallic nodules and the other for polymetallic sulfides. We have recently been allotted another area in the southern part of Andaman Sea, Arabian Sea, which is also about 10,000 square kilometers in the Carlsberg Ridge. So when allotted, we have to have the wherewithal to ensure that research and development and finding out what can be extracted, that ability rests with us. I mean, this is something that, of course, the Ministry of Earth Sciences is responsible for it, and they do a good job of it. Now, the second is fisheries. I'm missing out the fourth one, where there is a presentation by the students on fisheries and aquaculture. Fisheries is a topic which is, very close to our heart, India's heart. Basically, because we are looking at 1 lakh crores export of fisheries. Currently, I think we are about 65,000 or so. So this is something, and sustainable fishing gets huge amount of attention in the UNCLOS. And there are also regional fisheries management organizations, whether it is the IOTC, with the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, or the COFA, which is the South Indian Ocean Fisheries Association. So these are the ones which try and ensure sustainable fishing activity. But quite often, beyond our EZ, our ability to understand what happens itself can be a bit of a challenge. So there needs to be a lot of research and development done in this sector as well. And this scientific studies that the MRC is doing it through the IITs would be hugely helpful. Oil and natural gas, as you're aware, we are wholly dependent on imports today. Look at what has happened to Strait of Hormuz. So when your 50% of your requirement of crude oil and 60% of natural gas comes through the Strait of Hormuz, there is a problem. So aren't we blessed enough to find oil and natural gas in our EZ? There is a program called the HELP, or Hydrocarbon Exploration Licensing Policy, through which there is a solid drive to identify whether in our own EZ, whether in the mainland or in the Andamans region, is a drive which is currently on. Renewable sources of energy is a must, and there again we are looking at seas for a huge amount of renewable energy to be produced. Let me try and start concluding, because I need to rush for the next one. But what do we need to focus on? There are certain suggestions that I would put across. One is centralized data repository. We quite often tend to act in silos. There are enough number of agencies, enough number of ministries in this country which have got data which is available based on research and development that have been done at sea by their respective ships. And yet, this data is not centralized. Now, quite like the Directorate or DG Hydrocarbon has done for every hydrocarbon mapping, there is a centralized repository now. We need to do that for oceans as well. Capacity building for research and development. You cannot operate with 5 or 6 or 10 ships and cover the entire area of Indian Ocean region for research and development. I am of the firm belief that the Ministry of Earth Sciences and the Ministry of Mines and the others who actually deal with the oceans need to have higher capacity, by which I mean more number of ships. We need to widen the scope of research and development, because here again we function in penny packets. The moment you expand the scope and the area, that the Indian Ocean region offers to you, I think we'll do a lot better. There is already programs by the government of India, quite like the Deep Ocean Mission you would have heard, which is sending a manned submersible to 6,000 meters, basically for mineral extraction and things like that. Well on its way, and hopefully we should see that succeed quickly. Now, finally, if I were to just make one strong suggestion, which is there is a need for organizations like the MRC, which is doing a commendable job, to link up with the concerned ministries to undertake projects through these leading agencies that you're talking about, or they're presenting today, and the academia and the industry, which is very essential. Why I say link up with concerned ministry is that we should not end up duplicating the efforts. Quite often, one doesn't know what the other is doing. So instead of duplicate, and plus, like for example, I heard this wonderful presentation on submarine operations, the acoustics. So if you're doing that, Commander Arnab, I'm sure, can get you across to the right persons in the Navy, or through the NMSC, who is now a multi-agency coordinator at the NSCS. What does the NOTPAC of the Navy do? What does the NIOT do? What does the INCOIS at Hyderabad do? Or what does the NCPOR do? Each of them have a charter of responsibility, and they do a great job of what they're doing. But just that, you all need to be aware of what exactly are they doing, and so that it will help your project as well, and you're contributing positively to what they are doing as well. So with that, I will stop. Thank you very much, Dr. Arnab, for having invited me. It has been a pleasure.